Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 Lamley Awards Results Show. Ready to unveil the best and worst of Diecast in 2021 according to you. You voted on many categories on Instagram, on lamleygroup.com, on the best and worst of several brands, including the big Mattel brands Matchbox and Hot Wheels. And it is time to unveil what you picked as the best and worst. We'll work through every brand. This might be a long video, so sit back and relax and enjoy it. We'll go category by category. I'll tell you what you voted for, and then I'll give you my choice, and we'll culminate by announcing the winner of the big 64-car Royal Rumble, where we put all the brands against each other on Instagram, and then I'll unveil my model of the year at the very end. Let's get right to it. We need a better backdrop than this, and nothing better to use than this thing. This is the new, I've shown this before, but it's finally here. This is the new Dream Customs and Lamley diorama mat. That it's very large, as you can see. If I put a, this is not one of the winners, but if I put a car on this, you can see that it's kind of this blurred effect. When Dream Customs dropped their first one of these, and it was a smaller version, I thought this was super cool because you can put the car down like this against this blurred effect, and it looks like the car is moving. Great for pictures, great for dioramas. This mat is actually a desk size, so if you're a gamer and you want to use it as a mouse pad on your desk, you can. But this is a very limited, 150 made, at least sold on the Lamley Group store. It's going to be, and I'll drop some details on Instagram and on the blog, January 31st this is going to go on sale. They're individually numbered on the mat, so this is a very cool limited edition deal. And yeah, I'm going to hype this up while I do the Lamley Awards, so be prepared for more details. January 31st, this thing is going to go on sale. You definitely want it. I get so many questions about these when I do these videos. All right, let's get right to it. We're going to start with the first category we did, which was Tarmac Works Global 64. Tarmac Works is a lot of 1/64 scale, a lot of display cars. I am particularly keen on the Global 64 line because I think it fits well within what Lamley does. You know, these cars roll, they're kind of fun to play with, have very realistic way to do it. We did a tournament on Instagram. You basically voted from, I think it was like 8 cars down to, or actually 10 cars down to the final 2. I'm going to show you the final 4, and we're going to go in order. So this would be your 4th place in terms of best from Tarmac Works. This is the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera, right? I just kind of picked some colors, like a random color. I mean, I guess of what best represented is quote unquote how I did it. The casting, because this came in several colors. These were new castings for the Global 64 line. You guys picked that. That was in 4th place based on the voting on Instagram. Next one, it was an all Pagani show in the finals. So the one that lost out in the final 4 before the final was this one, this Pagani Huayra, right? This is the Pagani Huayra. Is it the BC? Yeah, it's the BC. We're going to see another color on this one. This was released fairly recently. But you guys like that one. It moved on several rounds, but lost out in the championship round. In the final 2, it was not only the battle of Paganis, but the battle of the Pagani Zondas. This was a fun one to do because the cars do look somewhat similar, but this is the one that came in as the runner-up. This is the Pagani Zonda Revolution. Hope I'm saying that right. This one, it's when we look at the other, in fact, I'll just even show you right now. You picked the Revolution, but it was the R that beat the Revolution. This is the R right here. The Pagani Zonda R. I can show, before I show you the R on the turntable, I can show you there's some differences in the spoiler. There's a few other subtle differences, maybe in the front grille and things. But this is Tarmac Works doing their thing. You know, the spoiler's a little bit different. You've got that middle piece in the spoiler. You've got, I think the intakes are the same. The back, somewhat the same, if not exactly the same, but enough differences to put them against each other. And you guys picked the R over the Revolution, but both of them are very, very cool. In terms of getting these models, you can go to partners like Surplus Goodies, hobby dealers. They're all available. Some of them are sold out at this point, but your model of the year was the Pagani Zonda R. Let me put this in proper order. And mine, I completely and utterly agree with you. I actually really like this one. And I think that this Zonda was so well detailed and so beautiful. Just a great representation of a highly detailed supercar. and I couldn't deviate from that. I shared in all of your excitement, and the R was my choice as the best of the Tarmac Works Global 64. Moving on to Mini GT. I thought about opening up a category for manufacturer of the year or diecast brand of the year, and I'd have to think it through to really come up with what I would call the brand of the year. But off the top of my head, it has to be Mini GT. So many cool, interesting models dropped. You just saw Mini GT become just something that was constantly talked about by collectors this year. And I'm going to go with your final four. This was your fourth place model based on the votes. It's the Ford GT LM. I picked the Gulf colors just as a good representation, but there were, I think, 2 or 3 released in 2021. But this is, and we're trying to base it on castings, and this one was just a good representation of how detailed Mini GT can get. The buttresses were done. You had those wind tunnels that are so unique to the Ford GT that were done so beautifully in these castings. They did, I think, 3 Ford GT castings. This is the one that went the furthest. So that was the one in fourth. The third one that just missed out on the championship round was actually a surprise. I expected this one to get to the final, but it got beat out. I'll show you which one beat it. This is the Bugatti Vision GT, first Bugatti casting. There's been a ton of excitement about Mini GT's Bugattis. There's more to come in 22. This one, again, the carbon fiber look, all the detail. Not a surprise that this one went far. Surprised that it got beat out before the championship based on the what I saw, from collectors in 2021 with that Bugatti. The final two, the runner-up, the one that actually beat the Bugatti, which was a surprise to me, was this one, the Corvette C8R. Another great casting. IMSA livery done in full detail by Mini GT. They've got a special relationship with IMSA, and you can see all of the detail in this one. It was great to see this casting done as it is, and I guess not a surprise that it made it to the final. I thought the Bugatti would beat it, but this one did not. I'm just basing it on response, not on my own opinion. I'll show you what won it for me. But the C8R made it to the final, and not a surprise what beat it. I think if you're talking Mini GT this year and kind of where a lot of the attention went and a lot of collectors were talking about was the introduction of the Kaido House line, Jun Amai's collaboration with Mini GT. This is the 510 Pro Street. I picked the purple color. I could have picked one of there was the green, which is kind of that olive green that's a signature color with Jun's wagon. He's got more coming out this year. He's already shown the wagon that's coming out, but the Pro Street was unveiled this year. I think we got it in 4 versions plus chases, and this one just powered through. Almost got beat out at one point, but then it thoroughly thrashed the Corvette in the final to be the Mini GT model of the year. Those are your final 4. My choice. The model that I chose is actually in those 4, but I chose a different version because I'm Lamley and I can do that. I did go with the Ford GT LM, but I just like the Le Mans winner. I just like the representation, the realistic representation of this race car, which is a legendary race car at this point. I probably could have used this one but I went with the Gulf because I just thought that's a popular collector livery. But so I guess my casting was the Ford GT LM. I just really liked this version, the Le Mans winner. Maybe you guys would say, hey, if we would have gotten the Le Mans winner of the vote, it might have been a little bit different. But I don't think the Kaido House model was going to get beat. Moving on, let's go to Auto World. When it comes to Auto World, it was fun to do these premium brands. I thought that we might get more engagement by doing these tournaments instead of polls with these premium brands on Instagram, and I was frankly right. We got hundreds of thousands of votes. It was incredible to see how many people got involved in these tournaments, whether it was Tarmac, Mini GT, and Auto World. A lot of comments, a lot of opinions, but ultimately 4 models ended up in the top. The Auto World tournament, I did every casting release, not just new and old, or not just new castings, but every casting released at least once, and ended up the two that didn't make the final in the final 4 were both square bodies. Not a surprise because Auto World is defined by square bodies. Every mix, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years they do 6 models in each, 2 colors of each, and everyone has had a square body in it, and they've always been by far the most popular. This was your fourth place finish. I can't tell you if it's the 83, 84, 82. I think there were 3 or 4 different ones released. There's still a mix for 2021, but we'll count that towards 22. But this one ended up being in fourth place, and you can see this one was in third. Now, it looks like the same casting, right? Why did I have 2 of the same casting? Well, actually, I didn't, because this one was a different year. You can see by the grills, and I don't remember which year was which, but I thought that these would represent best the square bodies released in 2021. And of course, they blew right through to the final 4, but then lost out to 2 other castings. And here's one of them. This one was a surprise. I did not expect the Jeep Wranglers to be going that far, but this one, I think people love this one. I don't know what year this one is, but it is the Jeep Wrangler. And you can see this one had the detailing on top with the roof rack, the gas cans, the cool fat tires, the big off-road tires, the all black. This one made its way all the way to the final and then lost in no surprise to Auto World's very first. And here is your vote for the best model of 2021 from Auto World. Their very first Japanese car. This is the Toyota Supra. They released 2 different versions of the Toyota Supra, both of which were in the tournament. One without the wing, one with the wing. And knowing you collectors, not a surprise that you guys wanted the one with that signature Supra spoiler on the back. This red version is what took it, was your model of the year, which leads to what was mine. What was my favorite? Well, I went back and forth. One of them was this Lincoln Continental released in the final mix of, or at least the last one before we did the tournament of 2021. I was so excited to see. I'm always excited about the Auto World big land yachts that they did. So much so that I forgot to put this one on the turntable, so I'm just showing it to you now. So this one was up there. I couldn't decide between the Lincoln Continental, and I had a certain soft spot considering some people were so angry that the first Supra was released without the wings. So I went with that one just because I could. And I thought, if Auto World's going to do a Supra, and we all love the Supra, this era or this generation of the Supra, why not do the one without the spoiler as well? So I love the fact that they said, hey, we're going to give you a Supra. It's going to be our first Japanese car, but we're going to give you one that was as a street version as just one you would see on the roads back in the day in the 90s. The one without the spoiler. It's a little bit more of a rare bird than with the spoiler these days, just because of the legend that the Supra has become. So I love that Auto World did it without the Supra or without the spoiler, and just because of that, it is my 2022 Auto World Model of the Year. Tomica Limited Vintage, let's do it. I have been collecting Tomica Limited Vintage forever, for years and years since I started Lamley, and I continue to grow more and more passionate about the brand. I still think no one does higher quality 164 than Tomica Limited Vintage, and what a year they had as well. I just went with new castings. It's always hard to do new castings with Tomica Limited Vintage, or any casting for that matter, because they're constantly changing. One of the things that defines Tomica Limited Vintage, and I'll go with our 4th place model right now, is that they want to be exact. So if there's a change in the headlight styles or the taillight styles from one year to the next, if they're doing a 1975 car and then they do a 1976 and it's just a slight difference in the headlights, they will do that. They want to have the car in hand in order to create the replica, and they want it to be as exact as they can get in 164. So I went with the new models released in 2021 that were, the most significant new models, like definitely fresh, like not just slightly changed, and you guys voted on those. This Toyota Altezza was your 4th place finish. It was in the final 4, also known as the Lexus IS here in the United States. We actually saw a version of that, more on that in a bit. But this one was one that moved on to the final 4 until it finally got beat out. I'll talk about this casting a little bit, but this is the Japanese version, the Toyota mark, that was released, and you voted it as your 4th best. 3rd best, another one that didn't make it to the final but just barely got beat out. Another one, Tomica Limited Vintage has been doing 90s cars now, and obviously we see that with the IS, and this is another one that really was just fantastic. High premium moving parts on this one. It is the Honda NSX. I don't think they've done an Acura version yet, But I picked this red version as the best representation of this new casting. We saw 6 versions released in 2021 of the Honda NSX. And this one was your runner-up, eventually losing to, I think, one of the championship models. I can't remember which one it was. But that was one that was up there as well for everyone. By the way, all these models you can get over at Japan Booster, or even better, pre-order them at japanbooster.com. Always got to give them a shout out. I've been working with them forever. A really interesting new casting. Just like Auto World jumping into the Japanese car business, we've seen Tomica Limited Vintage go more Italian with the Italian supercars, the classic cars with Ferrari. We saw several Ferraris. They didn't make it to the Final Four. But this Lamborghini Miura did. The Lamborghini is a new badge for Tomica Limited Vintage to be taking on. They did 2 Miuras in 2021. We're going to see the Countach in a couple different versions released in 2022. Who knows what else is coming. But this Miura made it to the championship. It's an absolutely beautiful replica. I don't know if there's a more beautiful car than the Lamborghini Miura that's ever been made. And this one is done beautifully by Tomica Limited Vintage. Not a surprise that it made it to the championship, and not a surprise that it got beat out by something that Lamley fans just love. If you take a Skyline and you make it an R32 GTR and you put a Calsonic livery on it, that's going to be a heavy hitter when it comes to Lamley fans, viewers, readers, whatever you name it. This is the model that was voted your best from Tomica Limited Vintage in 2021. Not a surprise in the least. This one has an opening hood, replicated just like the Calsonic number 1 GTR Skyline. Wheels so 90s on this one, which is just fantastic. Livery's perfect. This is one that just ran away with it. There wasn't a model that came close in the tournament to beating this one, and that was your number 1. Mine, well, let me just show you. I had a tie. There were 2 cars, and I went back and forth on this one. One I had to put in there because it's a car I've wanted to see replicated in 164 for years. I don't know if I've ever liked a car more, but before I get to that one, I had to go with this one. We had to get at least a Ferrari in here at some point. The Tomica Limited Vintage Ferraris have been fantastic, but you don't think of this silhouette when you think of a Ferrari. And I thought, this is pure Tomica Limited Vintage, just like I liked Auto World doing the wingless Supra. I love that Tomica Limited Vintage did this Ferrari. Kind of either loved or hated among Ferrari aficionados, but I just love that they did this car. I think it's a great replica, and it's just more for the choice than anything. I mean, they did a fantastic job on it. But this is not what you think. When you think of Ferraris, you don't think of this, but now we have this beautiful replica by Tomica Limited Vintage. I had to go with that one, but ultimately in my tie, I mentioned the Toyota Altezza. In my history, I don't know if I've liked a car more than the Lexus IS. I don't know why. It was in the 90s that I just, in the early 2000s that I guess it was the early 2000s, right? I loved this car. I should have bought one, and I never did. Young, married, didn't have the money to do it. But maybe one of these days I'll get my hands on one of these. I still love this car. And I've always wanted to see it be done by Hot Wheels, by Matchbox, by anybody, but I especially wanted to see Tomica Limited Vintage take it on. Well, they did the Toyota, and then they did a special Hong Kong exclusive with the Lexus badge on it. This is the one here. I couldn't, just like the Prelude last year from Hot Wheels, I couldn't ignore this one, and I absolutely love it. And I'm so glad that we finally have it done by Tomica Limited Vintage. But Hot Wheels, you want to do one? I ain't going to argue with you. There's your best of Tomica Limited Vintage. Now it's time to move on to the Mattel brands.